It's 3 o'clock. I'm calling this meeting to order. As part of our agenda was administration of oath to our new members of the CRA, and I'd like to both congratulate as well as welcome Sydney and Kevin to the CRA board. Look forward to working with both of you as we may move forward here. I'd like to take a moment. Well, let us do the roll call first, if you would, please.
Yeah. Ms. Sydney Talcott? Mr. Kevin Myers?
Here.
Mr. Thad Mosley?
Here.
Mr. Gary Paytow?
Here.
Mr. Ron Whittington?
Here.
Ms. Megan Edwards?
Looks like we have one member absent at the moment, but I'd like to just take a moment. It's always a challenge for us to get to know one another due to the sunshine laws. We don't have the opportunity to really get to talk and get a real understanding of everyone's background, experience, and I'd like to, Kevin, if you would, maybe you could start, just give us a little bit of insight into your background, your professional experience, and what skills and talents you can bring to this board.
Absolutely. So, new to the buttons, so I'm going to try to figure those out as I go. I kind of picked up on that with the here part, so far so good. As was mentioned, my name is Kevin Myers. I'm born and raised here in Jacksonville Beach. We have, as a family, moved away and have moved back a couple times. So the short answer of what drove me to getting involved in the city locally is that we had a 2-year-old, and being raised in this community, and that having that 2-year-old really kind of shook me awake and made me realize just how unique and precious this community is, and how I would like to be involved in both helping the community progress as a whole and kind of maintain some of the facets that make it what it is. So that's kind of why. Professional background, probably a little more boring there. I have a math and finance background as a whole. Left UNF with a math degree and a minor in chemistry. Found myself in health insurance. Not sure that was ever really my dream, but have actually loved the time spent in that industry. Have held multiple roles at Florida Blue. More recently, I'm in charge of a select book of business that we call key accounts, and we manage some of our larger national clients, ultimately keeping them happy, ensuring that their members have access to care however we can possibly. Right? So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the warm welcome, and look forward to collectively driving this boulder over the hill.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Obviously, another member of our board this afternoon, Sydney, welcome. You are in a position as first alternate on the board, but will play an important role on the board, particularly since we have one of our members absent today, so that makes you a voting member as part of the board this afternoon. So it is an important role that you're playing. And if you wouldn't mind, just take a minute, if you could just give us an understanding of your background and
Also learning the button system. My background is actually in architecture. That's what my degrees are in, and I worked in architecture for a bit, and then transitioned into working in technology. I currently work for an augmented reality company, so sounds kind of far out, but really it's just different ways to visualize space and the physical environment, and so hopefully those skills, while very niche, might come in useful here. At least the architecture part will. Similar to Kevin, I just really wanted to get involved with the community. You know, Jack's Beach, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but it's a contribute and grow the community in the best way. That's kind of what I'm going to do. So.
Sydney, thank you. And just as quickly as I promoted you, I get to demote you. Since Megan just walked in and joined us, it means that, you know, again, you'll be serving as first alternate, but that doesn't mean that as we go through each of the items in our agenda that you won't have an opportunity to participate in it. It's just that when voting comes, unfortunately.
I'll watch you.
Yeah. I'd like to just say, you know, as long as we're doing this, I just want to take a minute and let those board members that are here have you understand where they're from and what their background is, so that you understand the other capabilities that are on this board. So with that, if you want to just take a minute and.
My name's Thad Mosley. Grew up on the west side of Jacksonville. Got involved in Jackson Beach in the early 90s. Transitioned from the previous degree. And my wife and I have been operating 37 apartments up and down the beaches for about 25 years. Still own a couple of properties in management. Have been very, very interested in seeing how Jackson Beach has changed. A couple steps forward, a step back here and there. I particularly got involved with CRA. Oh gosh, a little over a year ago, I guess, when I initially had interest in it. Very particularly because of the fairly dire situation north of 3rd Avenue north of Jackson Beach that had existed in perpetuity since my arrival, and was suffering from various ailments, some historical, some more recently inflicted. Well, I should best get along and see what to do about it. Glad to be here. Recognizing fully that a large portion of our obligation is to further the desires of council within the remit that we have in our charter of what we can and cannot do with monies and where we can and cannot do things with monies. So very aware of that and hoping that we here at the CRA can contribute a bit to the process as we go along.
Thank you, Dad. Megan, if you wouldn't mind, would you give us a little
Hi.
insight?
Hi there, how are you? My name is Megan Edwards. You might see it Megan Leslie. So I'm an attorney, I'm a real estate attorney. I have a practice, my partner is my sister. So we have a practice of 6 attorneys, and we do primarily real estate litigation, transactions, land use, buying and selling, name it, all those types of things. I've been in Jack's Beach for about 9 years. I'm originally from New York. I've been here for a while, so I don't sound like it. But I've been in Jack's Beach for every now and then. My husband gets me on a couple of words. But been here for 9 years. I've been on the board for a year. So it's just been a year that I've been on the agency, on the CRA. Yeah, that's it.
Megan, thank you. And, wouldn't mind.
Well, I was an alternate until this meeting, so enjoy. And I listen a lot because there's a lot of acronyms, so feel free to ask a question. I listen a lot. I've been here for 23 years. I'm originally from Atlanta. I worked as a reporter, went to Dallas, worked as a reporter there, went into public relations, worked with a transit agency there in PR, public relations, and then went back to Atlanta, worked at the Olympics, and then after 9/11, I moved down here, so I lived in Jack's Beach off of South Beach Parkway since that time. And I was involved in the Hyde referendum when I first got here, doing publicity for that back in '04, I believe. And then really wasn't involved in the city, but I've done a lot of nonprofit stuff. And I'm on the Jacksonville Armory Board of Directors. I was board chair for a couple of years. And just saw an opportunity to work with the city, and that's winding down, so I thought it'd be a good opportunity. And the only thing I'll say is I went through a CIA, which is a leadership. I would strongly recommend you do that if you get an opportunity, because that was very helpful for me in understanding some of the things that will cross this board. So, welcome.
And I guess I'll take the last minute here and introduce myself. You'll see it written many times in courtesy to the floor. And I understand we have one speaker that,
Yes, and I believe now is the appropriate time for it to come up since it's a non-agenda item.
okay. I'm sorry, if you would introduce yourself and name and address and so forth, and you have approximately 3 minutes to address the board.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. My name is Samantha Pritchard. I'm the Director of Sales at the Spring Hill Suites Jacks Beach Oceanfront Hotel. That's at 465 First Street North. I've been with Marriott Hotels the last 10 years or so and had the privilege of getting to sell that beautiful property along with the Fairfield down the street. So I'm here to just chat about the lot that's next door to the hotel. I know Taylor's been really receptive in speaking with our general manager about some progress on moving those pavers and a rusty fence out of the lot. As of this week, we've also seen the addition of 2 overflowing dumpsters added in front of that fence, and it's beginning to impact our guest experience. So as a sales director, I have buses pulling up with groups to drop off guests and visitors. We have our Starbucks location that we've added in to that location, and guests are beginning to complain to the hotel about the undesirable experience, thinking it has to do with the hotel. So we appreciate any support or insight on that lot next door. I know this has been something we've worked on for about 9 months or more. Pavers, we saw Petticoat Schmidt out there working with trucks the other day, took a pallet of pavers out, but there was not any additional work done at this time, and it's continuing to take a step back.
Taylor, do you want to address anything in reference to where we stand with the pier parking lot?
Maybe when we get to staff report, typically we don't address during courtesy of the floor.
Yeah.
But during staff report, we can provide some updates.
We have a staff report today.
Yes, I've got quite a bit of information that I will be handing out to you guys whenever it seems necessary. I figured we would get through our old business and our grant applications and then either under new business or discussion. I've got some things to.
I'm sorry, I just, on the agenda that I had last, that I had gotten off the website.
Right, it's not on there. It was a last minute addition today. And so typically in the past, I would ask the chairman when we got to items for discussion if we could add a section for staff to update you guys. And so that was the plan today.
Okay, and where would you like to have that?
Items for discussion.
Okay,
Thanks, Taylor, appreciate it.
then we shall do that at that point. Thank you. We don't have any meeting minutes to approve at this point.
No, sir. You will have 3 sets.
Okay. Thank you. Unfinished old business. Item A, which is the facade grant amendment for Mangoes.
Yes, sir.
I'll let you take that one and give us your insight and thoughts on that.
Yep, so this one, again, is pretty straightforward. Originally, it was approved in October. After talking with their contractors and safety requirements, they would like to upgrade to a safer glass. That is something that is not actually required. That's an option, but I feel like staff definitely supports them using the tempered glass because it is safer. It will increase the CRA portion by just shy of $6,800. And so they are just seeking an amendment for that increase to do the tempered glass. Other than that, the grant has not changed. It's just the material that has caused the cost to go up.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? I don't see any. I have one question. It talks about tempered glass and that they would like to upgrade to a tempered glass. Is this only at the doors or is this for all of the glass in the storefront that they're proposing to renovate?
So, let's see, this is gonna be the storefront frame, that is the 6x7 entrance, and then there's a 3x7 entrance door, and then, let's see, they've got, wherever, in their sheets that it was showing those images of the glass is where it will be, so it is on those tempered front doors and then the surrounding glass around it. So there'll be 2 opening storefront systems, and then there will be clear glass and then the glazing for that on either side. So it's that whole section across the front.
It's the whole section
Yep, and it's reflected in, I'm trying to find the picture. The pictures that you can kind of see that they attached on pages, basically like 7 and 8 of the packet, and 9's a really good image as well. It shows all that glass.
Yeah, I just found it kind of challenging looking at this proposal, because to me it sounded like it was only for the doors themselves that they were doing the tempered glass.
Yeah, if you take a look to just after the images, it also shows some drawings. They're sideways because they're landscape oriented on these pages, so I apologize for that. But it shows the 2 sets of doors, and then it shows the over glass and then the side panels of the glass as well. So it kind of shows, and then they've got 2 sets of those that they're doing.
I mean, in the long run, it is the right thing to do is put tempered glass in there because it is considered a safety glazing and it makes more sense for the storefront in the long run. I was just trying to make sure I was clear on
Sure.
how much glass they were putting in the way of tempered product.
Yeah,
So,
quite a bit.
any other questions from the board, comments? If not, I assume you need a vote on this item.
Yes, sir.
So, with
Please.
that, I'll do a roll call vote.
Yes, we will. Actually, Mr. Chair, if for this one, since we are amending the original grant and it's an increased amount, could we do a motion and a second and then a roll call just so we have that formal motion in place, amending this since it does increase the amount we're rewarding?
I'll make a motion to approve the increase for mangoes for tempered glass.
I'll second.
We have a motion as well as a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none,
Mr. Kevin Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Paytow,
yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington,
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item, item B, which is the facade grant update for 4 Point Sheridan.
Yes, sir. So this one, I talked with the city attorney, because it was actually ended up costing less, it could have just kind of been one of those behind the scenes administrative, but we both wanted to, in the spirit of being transparent, bring this back to you guys as an update. What happened here is the grant total project cost initially was $156,887. So when they sought CRA funding, they were eligible for the maximum amount of the grant, which is a 2-to-1 ratio up to 100,000. So they were eligible for the full 100. When they got in there, they had a few areas of work that were a little bit less than they originally anticipated. And then they also realized that their lights along the back were already in compliance and they did not need upgrading or replacing, so they opted not to do that. In doing so, though, it brought the total cost down to $147,534. Based off of that ratio, that now drops their full amount to just under $100,000. So again, it ended up actually saving us just over $1,600 in the long run on their grant. No reapproval is necessary, but we did want to get acknowledgement and consensus from the board that you were all made aware of this, just so we have that for the record.
Any questions or comments from the board?
It's just a rarity to have them come back asking for less money, so.
It probably will never happen again, so enjoy it.
So we'll accept it for sure.
Okay.
Well, to a certain extent, it's almost the second time because I guess the one grant that was
That's true.
approved, they did not move forward with their improvements. So
That is correct.
We ended up having to pull those numbers back again. But if there are no other comments, I'd like to get a motion on this item, please.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it if it needs to be voted on.
I will take roll for the vote. Mr. Kevin Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Paytow,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington,
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay. Well, that takes care of the old stuff. Now we get to move into the new facade grant applications. And the first one on our agenda is the Ritz.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have you walk us through that, Taylor, if you wouldn't mind.
exterior improvements. Their decorative fencing that is around their outdoor patio area needs replacing. It's approximately 103 linear feet, and that does include 2 sets of gates, and having those 2 sets of gates is required by a fire marshal. Roof and gutter repairs, and that's just repairs to the existing roof and the gutter system. And then they are doing some permanently affixed exterior lighting, and within those lighting, they have an integrated camera system within those lights. Something that we did acknowledge in this application and in your packet is when this applicant applied, this was back before Christmas. As far as that applicant knew, there is no safety grant program, and actually right now, as we sit here and talk, there still is no safety grant program because it has not yet been approved. So the reason that staff is recommending approval of this grant under the current facade grant program is because at the time of this application and at the time of the vote for this, that is the only incentive program that exists. If the agency were to decide to not award the exterior light and cameras, what would then happen is we would have to approve safety grant today, take the safety grant approval to city council as well, and then the applicants are gonna have to come back, they have to reapply under a new application because they're not the same application. Again, that is completely up to the agency. It was just staff's recommendation was to approve the full grant, because as far as the applicant knew at that time, that was the only grant that existed. I'm happy to answer any questions as best as I can.
I'll open it up to the board for discussion, and Ed, you have some comments?
While this is technically not part of the safety grant program, very strongly feel that anything that's done regarding security, cameras, lighting, particularly in some of these areas that are a little shadowy around the edges and corners and are in a couple of cases somewhat close to areas where we've had problems in the past. Just would want to make sure that the Jacksonville Beach Police Department is totally involved in taking a look at where these cameras and in some cases lighting that might relate it to the security program when it is finalized go up, because it's really key that these guys be able to use this effectively since we're helping pay for it.
Yep.
So that's what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Don't worry, I will invite every one of them out there and several others with me along this process. If approved, they will all be probably far more involved in the community.
Well,
Are there any other comments? Kevin?
So just a quick clarifying question, and first off, a quick thank you to Taylor for, I sent her a litany of questions to lead up to today's discussion, so appreciate that help, Taylor, for clarifications. But one that I just now thought of, on the fence restoration, what's the why? Is it the old fence needs to be replaced? Is it a code situation? Do we know?
It is because it's that iron and it's been out here for so long and it's in these elements. This salt air is not very forgiving on metals, unfortunately. And then the fenced off area is required. They have to have it to be able to operate out there and be able to serve food and alcohol. So it is required, and it is not, it's not a hazard yet, but our goal is to not let it get to a point where it's so hazardous that patrons are bumping into it and it's falling over and people are being stabbed by an iron fence. A bit graphic, but just putting it blunt. I mean, yeah, it's not quite there yet, but it does need replacing.
Thank you, and appreciate the picture on the visual there.
We got plenty more, don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments? I have just a couple of questions, Taylor. They're proposing a new roof for the structure, and I understand that it's supposed to be a metal roof.
Yes.
Do we know what color that roof is going to be?
Give me 1 second. I do, but there have been so many of
I didn't
these.
quite see it.
Bear with me. I believe it is just that standard silver coloring. It's, I know that their colors can finish, but I believe that they just opted to go with that standard silver coloring.
I would just say that we need to be a little bit careful when we do that, particularly that color, because what you've got is at the, what's the name of the building? Sorry, across the street. It's not it's Metropolitan. You've got residences up there in the Metropolitan that are going to be looking down on that roof and with certain sun reflections and so forth. That could be a real problem for the residences that are up there. So I would hope that you take a hard look at truly what color that roof is going to be and not create another problem for the adjacent neighbor. In reference to the question of security, there's a line item for safety and security lighting, which I understand and totally agree with. And then there's a second item in reference to the cameras and so forth. You said you'd like to see this approved at this point so that they don't have to come back and have an extended approval period. I'm just concerned that when we get down to the discussion later about the safety grant program, we're opening up and giving approval before others have an opportunity to submit, because it's on a first come, first served basis. And it seems like we're allowing an approval before we even get the item out there on the street for everybody to respond to. And based on information that you've provided, we're going to have limited funds that are going to be available. So how do we do it appropriately and allow everyone an equal opportunity to go after those funds?
Yeah.
And then if you take a look at the numbers, if you take a look at the security number of the $15,990 that they're proposing just for the cameras themselves, it slightly exceeds the $10,000 limit that is in the safety grant program. You know, we would, if we're going to follow the safety grant criteria, I think we're going to have to reduce that amount slightly to meet the $10,000 criteria.
Sure, and I think this is where, this is a board decision, quite frankly. As far as making it an equal opportunity, it has been an equal opportunity for every business in the downtown for the last 2.5 years. Anybody could have sought out the facade grant. These have always been allowable expenses. After certain events that occurred last year, it became pertinent that we wanted to hone in and identify a specifically called out safety grant. But this is kind of in the same classification as one of these applicants has a mural in their package as well. You know, we have not yet developed the public art grant, but it's always been an allowable expense under this broader umbrella. So I think you could almost argue either side of that anyone could have asked for this funding for the last 2.5 years. They just opted to at this time. So again, it's completely up to the board on how you wish to proceed or not proceed.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this item? Yeah.
I think what I just heard is that as far as the $10,000 max, if this is granted as part of the facade grant program, that is not a factor.
Correct, because this is a part of their
Not a
overall.
factor, so it would not apply to being an exception to the $10,000 max, since it's not a safety grant.
Correct, yes,
We
sir.
don't have a safety grant program yet, but
Correct.
it would be part of the facade grant program. And Taylor, do I understand that this sort of camera and lighting situation would have qualified under the facade grant program had anyone else asked for it over the last 2.5 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's not a problem.
And
As
Mr.
far as
Chair,
setting precedent. But it's interesting though, if someone wants $50,000 worth of cameras, they could apply for it under the facade grant program.
so that is what we're implementing the safety grant program for, is to eliminate the ability of that happening. So once this program, if approved, has now become its own standing program, then that line item in the regular facade grant program no longer exists, and they can only apply for cameras and safety upgrades under that safety grant.
Got it. Thank you. So
Mr.
this is the old facade grant program. But this
Basically,
opportunity will go
yes.
away when the safety program is implemented.
Right. right. Mr. Chairman, I did want to point out, I know there are two quotes in here regarding the cameras. It's not a huge difference, but their camera line item is the $30,140 for the lighting and the camera upgrades, and the camera portion of that is $12,690, not the $15,000. The $15,000 was a secondary.
If you take 80% if you're using the criteria in the security.
Sure, I was just pointing it out, it was not the $15,000 one, it was the $12,000 one.
Okay. If there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Ron talked about this a little bit, but as part of, it's been customary for camera systems to become part of the facade program.
No, this is the first one.
So I'm having a little heartache over that.
Yeah. Totally. If we, let's just say, for math purposes, if they were to take the 12,600 out, and then the allowable expense up to that is up to 80% anyway, that would put them eligible for the full $10,000 amount anyway under that separate grant. So just to kind of talk on both sides of the fence, if you will, I don't think it's a huge detriment. I can't see it, and would it, in the long run, does it make a clean cut, clean paper trail? Yes, because to your point, this is the first person that has ever sought out anything camera related. So I do think it could be supported to go about it that route.
Yeah. So is there, so when we get the safety grant program that comes out, that will get rid of the facade program, right?
No.
Okay, both will exist at the same time. Is there anything that would keep them from, let's say, we want to approve this less the camera? Is there any reason why they couldn't go then to the safety and say, we're looking for a grant towards
No reason at all.
safety? Okay.
And I can't do this in my head, so bear with me.
Oh, sure.
I will tell you exactly what their full award would be, less cameras.
And is there anticipated when we'll have that program available for the safety? Because if it's, you know, a year, 2 years.
No, I mean in theory, like after today.
Oh, okay, okay. So this is something that they could go immediate, if we say, look, we're gonna approve it, less the camera, but you are not excluded from applying for a grant through the safety program, you can go ahead and do that right now.
Yeah, and this is my fault. I've had so many conversations about all these programs over the last couple of weeks. I have been saying we have to go back to council with this, but the more I'm sitting here talking through it, I do believe because this was a part of the new downtown plan and because incentives are a part of the overall budget, I do not believe actually this has to go back to council necessarily as an action item. It can go back more as a briefing update as, hey, we have officially implemented this plan. I would defer and want to talk to the CFO and the city manager before finalizing that, but as far as the agency approval, that in theory would happen today. And then if we were to take out just that portion, just the cameras, that would put the total project at $131,091. And then with the 2-to-1 ratio, our portion would be $87,394, and their portion would be $43,697. So it does not substantially change the total grant amount too much.
That makes me, I think, feel a little more comfortable.
Okay.
Because if it were parsed out maybe a little bit more,
Understood.
right, if we just had, because we have lighting, right, permanently fixed exterior lighting,
Yep.
and they have in here security lighting, so if it, I wouldn't have any objection to
Okay.
approving it for lighting, but I think as far as the camera system is concerned, I don't think it quite fits the scope
Okay.
of the facade grant program.
Yeah, totally fair. And like I said, it's a less than $10,000 difference between the portion that they could receive versus this. And then, like I said, if the safety grant program is approved, and I am right that we don't have to get full council approval, and Heather concurs that we don't think we do. In theory, we could reach out to that applicant this week and walk them through the safety grant and then basically bring you guys your first safety grant application in 30 days. It should not be too big of an issue.
Any other thoughts, comments? With that, I'll entertain a motion on this grant.
Mr. Chair, if we're going to make the motion to eliminate that camera portion, if that is the motion someone chooses to make, if you could update under requested action where it says approved, deny, Rick's facade grant application for that amount, you could say, approve the Ritz facade grant application for, and then I can give you the number if somebody wants to do it that way. And then you can add the caveat that this is less the security cameras, just so we have it clean for the minutes, please.
Again, could I get, is there a motion in reference to this?
I will make a motion to approve the facade grant, less the security cameras, reducing the total award amount by,
It will reduce down to $87,394.
to reduce it down to $87,394.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Sir? Mr. Kevin Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley?
Yes.
Mr. Gary Paytow?
Yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington?
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards?
Yes.
Great, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Moving on to item B, again, a facade grant application from Ocean Crown in reference to their structure.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Sorry, bear with me, this is
for
a
us.
long agenda, scroll through, okay. So this is Ocean Crown. They are seeking landscaping and also money for a mural. This one also had the fun of breaking this one out into two parts as well. It just made more sense because if the agency agrees to provide the CRA contribution to the mural, that is not something that we would approve in full today. It would be a two-part motion, so we would approve the landscaping piece, good to go, and just for the agency, actually, Gary, you might have been the only one here when this happened several years back. We had a facade grant application that we approved, but then we realized, oh wait, we need to get Parks and Recreation involved. Now that's just kind of a standard practice for us, so rest assured, any landscaping, I will work with our Chief of Parks Maintenance to make sure it fits the aesthetic of the goals for the city. And then the second part of that application would be to approve or reject the funding for the mural, pending the art committee's review of that tomorrow. Very conveniently, they have a meeting already tomorrow, so the timing worked out really well here. The landscaping includes planters, hanging baskets, irrigation, wood decking, stonework, and plants. The requested contribution from the agency is $18,853. And then the mural, it is attached to your packet. That is along the southern side of the building. And the artist is someone who has done a lot of work out here. He did Surf of the Bar right here and several other murals in the downtown, so he's very familiar with the area. And I am happy to answer any questions you may have to the best of my ability.
Any questions, comments from the board? Heather, I do have, excuse me, Taylor, I do have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I went out there and took a look at this building,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm concerned that we're going to be spending $28,000 for a mural that you're really not going to be able to see.
Okay.
It's stuck between two buildings, and there's roughly 20 feet between the Best Western and the structure itself. And you may see the front part of it where you see the guy standing with, I assume that's a hose or something that he has. But when you look down the length of it, you can't see any of the rest of that mural.
Sure.
And I think that personally, I believe that we could better spend our dollars than putting a mural up there. They just recently painted that building too, if I'm not mistaken. So, I think that it looks halfway decent. We need to clean up the area between Best Western and that structure.
Sure.
But I have a hard time supporting this because it's just not the right place for a mural.
Okay.
Are there any other thoughts or comments from the board? Go ahead, Kevin.
So excuse the ignorance. I think those are very valid points. Is that something the Art Advisory Committee would take into consideration, or is that really our decision to make here?
That's hard for me to answer. I mean, I would hope that they would take a look at it from that standpoint, but, this is, you almost need to go out there and look at it yourself, and I think you'd understand if you go on to
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. And sorry, Taylor, remind me, the vote today is specific to the landscaping or mural or both?
Yes, that is correct. And it's a very unique situation with the mural, because again, you guys are in luck today, you're getting a lot of these. This is the first applicant that has sought out mural funding, so this is also new to all of us. And so we all get to learn together how this process is gonna work, and I am sure we will have bumps along the way, but we will figure it out together.
Okay, thank you.
That,
Would it be possible to separate the landscaping request from the mural request
Absolutely.
without too much trouble?
Mm-hmm. Yep, very easily.
And that would put us in a position to move on the landscaping and to defer, delay, or await a consultation from our art committee on the mural.
Yes, sir.
I was gonna say something similar, unless we're able to vote on both things and reserve, condition it on, subject to approval of the art committee. I guess 6 of one, half a dozen of another, but another option, but yeah, I would agree, separating it out, take it to the art committee.
Well, we've got 30 days
Okay.
to have another shot to approve
Okay.
it if everybody's all
Yeah.
together on it, but then I don't think we need to conditionally approve it necessarily.
Okay, and so just reserve on voting on it now and do it again once we get.
This sounds like a pretty popular muralist, so it's a good chance that
Mhm.
the winds might blow slightly in that direction when the art committee meets. So
Sure.
I think maybe we should
Let them
move
get
on
at it.
the landscaping and defer action on the mural.
right,
I'm just gonna agree, we can wait 30 days, and I know the area, but I haven't seen what you're referring to, so take a look at it on the way out of here and see what. It's an alley.
Yeah, that just helps. It'll be like right here.
that's exactly what I was
Yeah.
referring
so
to, is that,
Yeah. They take them from one way, but,
so with that, is there any other comments from anybody? Sydney?
Yeah, I just, again, a newbie question, but, since this is a first, would we work with the art advisory committee to kind of land on a, possible solution, or with the applicant, just to see if, that they're open to different walls or different configuration? Is that maybe what the next phase would look like for this?
Well, it's hard for me to answer that question. I don't know
I can
whether
take a
Taylor
stab at it.
can or
Yeah.
not. But one of the things I would like to do in one of our upcoming meetings is to have a joint session with the art committee and talk about priorities for this next year, because there are limited funds available for the art committee this year. And we're starting to get tighter in our funding in other areas, so we have to be a little bit careful in where we're going to spend our funds. What are the priorities? I think some of this will flush itself out in our joint session with council, where hopefully we will all come to an agreement as to what the priorities are for the year, and then figure out how we're going to fund everything that we're talking about. But, I don't know that that truly answers your question, but I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, so I would think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking this still to the art committee tomorrow, hearing their feedback. Again, they were created just because they do offer a different perspective, I think, than a lot of us on the benefit of public art. That's an alleyway that, needs to have a good hard look, somebody needs to really look at that, because it does, in our art master plan that was created back, 2017, there were certain alleyways they wanted to actually activate. But with that being said, safety has to be a priority over anything else. So I do think it's something where the art committee can say, hey, we really like that this is a local artist, we really like this piece, can we shift it, this way, that way, wherever. Usually the way these things go is that the art committee would kind of take lead, at least on the creative portion of this, and then would make a recommendation for staff to then bring back to you guys to consider at the next meeting. And if everyone's comfortable with that, then that's kind of how, pending whatever motion's made, then that's kind of how staff will proceed with this.
Thank you.
That,
Can we make a disappear down there. And reappear from them sometimes. So there's some other thoughts that might need to go into that before we start spending money on that wall and send people to the side of the
Sure.
or 15, or 12, whatever. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion in reference to the facade grant application for Ocean Crown.
Motion to approve the landscaping portion and defer on the mural portion to the next meeting.
Second.
We have a motion as well as a second. Any final discussion? Roll call, please.
All right, Mr. Kevin Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Paytow,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington,
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards.
Yes.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. On to the next application.
One more.
An application from Bricks in reference to the facade grant application.
Yes, and I'll be very transparent with this group. The owners are probably laughing if they're watching right now. Bricks and Bricks are the same group, and I got 2 facade grant applications on the same day at the same time, right before Christmas, right after Thanksgiving, and for about 2 weeks I was so confused trying to figure out which went to where. And I even went one day to look at Bricks on the outside, and I'm going, this doesn't make any sense. They don't have, and then it was a lot. So I'm very happy I was able to get this sorted out before this meeting. So the Bricks is seeking funding. Again, this will be one where you may want to pull out the camera portion. They're seeking additional lighting, but with those lighting, they wanted to add cameras on those same light poles. So we may want to follow what we did with the earlier application. And then their patio cover, that is their big ticket item. It is a massive 33 foot by like 16 feet high, 44 feet wide, bronze coated, whatever it is, this massive patio structure that again is not at the point of being dilapidated where there's injuries, but it could get to that point. So I would, if the agency were to seek to approve this, since with the Ritz, we pulled out the cameras, I would probably recommend we look at going that same route. And I believe their camera system on this one that they were seeking was about $13,000. So again, truly not that far off of the future potential cap for the safety grant program. So it's not going to be too terribly detrimental, I don't feel.
Any comments from anybody in reference to this item? Rob?
I was going to make a joke, but I'm not going to do that. They have a great steak dinner on Friday, so if we can make a caveat that they keep that for at least 5 years, or as long as this thing will.
We know, we go all the time for lunch.
Yeah, I think we should. We should do the same as we did before and pull out the security and let them do that separately.
Okay.
Anyone else?
They are determined to make me do math.
Taylor, I'm going to express some concern about the canopy that they're proposing to put in place as a significant structure. And when I look at the grant guidelines and so forth that we have on our website, it indicates repair and replacement of things. It doesn't talk about new construction. And I really see this as new construction. I don't know exactly where this is going. It would have been helpful maybe to see a rendering or something as to where and how this is going to be added to the structure, and does it really improve what's already out there? I have a lot of questions in relationship to that, and I'm wondering whether $100,000 spent on a canopy is really something that this grant is all about.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is where, when we created this program, we had to add that fun little caveat so we didn't get ourselves in trouble that says essentially all decisions made are at the discretion of the agency. I feel, and Heather, please correct me if I'm wrong, in the way that the building official would look at this, because of where this is affixed to the building, this would, as far as he would look at this, go as a permanent awning type structure. So, like,
Yeah, so I'm just reading the application right now as I scroll through, and it does say repair, replacement, and or new, and then lists all those things. I know there is a covered area over their bar outside, so to me, this is replacing that with something just larger, maybe twice the size. So I would consider it a replacement since there's one already there.
But that's not what they're replacing, they're adding to that, is really what it comes down to.
it's a replacement and expansion.
And Heather, I'll just let you know, yes, I understand what you're saying. You look at the application itself, it talks about new, but when you look at our guidelines, it says repair or replacement. It doesn't say new, so there's a little bit of a conflict in the documents that we have. But, I guess the reason I'm somewhat hesitant is that, we're going to be looking at another item in our agenda here coming up, which has to do with security and safety. And the challenge of funding that is going to be interesting. Are we going to be able, we're going to approve something, but we may not be able to fund it, particularly if we approve some of these larger cost items. And I'm a little bit concerned. I just, again, that's just my personal feeling that I just don't see if they really need additional outdoor covered space. I think that's part of the capital improvements project that the restaurant bar needs to do, not something that's part of the facade improvement program. Megan?
I'm along the same lines as Gary. I guess my question would be, right, if it's at our discretion, in reviewing it, I see where it says awnings. It's a little hard to make the transition from awnings to a $200,000 cover. With that being said, if it's at our discretion, I guess we have to decide what's facade, right? And have we approved something, because when I look at the picture that we have attached to or what they propose attached to the application, it looks a little more facade there. So I guess we have to decide if we want something like this to be considered facade, and if we've approved something like this before under this facade grant.
Yeah, we've approved grants of this amount. We've awarded more than one of the full 100,000 amount. Most of those, so previously, were several elements to one larger project. So it may have a landscape, a covered area, but I could be very wrong. Like I said, this all kind of runs together from time to time, but I do not believe there's ever been one awarded for a single piece that was this costly.
And was it for something like this, like a covering, like a full outside covering, if you can recall, or is it?
I was gonna say, if you guys still discuss, if you give me a minute, I'll pull up and see, because we've got some that are close to this, but there hasn't been, I don't think, anything this substantial.
So I guess, do we want this to be considered facade? Do we want this to be considered capital improvement? I mean, if this is the first, we want to be
Consistent.
but if we haven't had this before, I don't know, what do we?
Set precedents.
Yeah, do we want to say something like this gets covered, or something doesn't like this get covered under facade?
So I would say cost-wise, the closest we've come to a singular element of one of these grants was the Best Western, and that was the complete overhaul of their balconies to upgrade to a more modern style and give an elevated appearance. And that project, it did not replace the balconies with the previously existing material. It did upgrade them to a new material. It was a different material than was existing. But, you could argue that was elevating the facade of the building because those balconies needed it. And for 4 points, they did an awning replacement, and it was $8,000.
Now, what we have, what's out on our, on the Jack's Beach website, what the public is seeing is that it's for to undertake exterior renovations designed to achieve noticeable visual changes and create a positive impact in the designated portion. Do we think this does that?
That's a great question.
Well, if it's raining,
Right, well, right. Well, I mean, I think that's important too, right? Is it visually better to see people sitting outside under an awning versus it being wet and vacant? I don't know.
I'm gonna pass the time
Oh, of
down
course,
to
of course,
Sydney
yeah.
for a moment, if you don't mind.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so, yeah, I generally agree with this thread. Is it reasonable, given that we're, trying to be mindful of precedents we're setting and things like that, is it reasonable for us to go back and ask for perhaps, I'd love to see a site plan, because seeing this just in a vacuum isn't like, I have questions. And so, I don't know if that's a possibility for us to ask for more detail, before making any kind of decision.
I think in a lot of ways, just based on the conversations that we're hearing, I think it would be more than an appropriate motion from the agency to just, quite frankly, defer this to the next meeting, kind of as a whole, to keep everything together and packaged. And maybe not even necessarily defer, because they do have that safety component, so maybe the status is, reject the grant application as it exists and request that the applicant come in and provide a site plan for the facade grant portion for the next meeting, and then separately apply for the safety grant program for the other component. So I don't even know that deferring is necessarily the appropriate avenue as much as rejecting.
I would just add to that, Taylor, that not just a site plan, but a rendering of what that's going to take, what that's going to look like in its location on the structure itself.
Right. Okay.
Right.
this is one other question, without looking through all this, how much larger is this than the existing? Is it in here? I can't find the detail, people let you know.
It's not, but this is, well, I can tell you it's not higher based on where it has to be affixed to the building. It can't be any higher. I believe it's going to be deeper.
Deep.
Yes, that's my understanding of where it ends now, the bar. I believe where they have kind of that whole open area then past the bar, that this would cover and kind of overhang all of that. So it's an upgrade to what's existing.
So maybe double the size of what it is now?
Probably.
Probably. Okay, thank you.
Ed?
Taylor just made the point that while we've had dollar expenditures in this neighborhood, they've been for things that do sound rather more facade. Railings, awnings,
Sure.
multiple applications across the face of the facade of the building. I think Gary's got a really good point. This is not very facade-y. It's a significant structural improvement to the premises.
Okay.
I go back to when it was a flat roof with a bottle club on Sunday mornings, and we walked through the door and everybody went quiet. There were 5 or 6 arrests in there a month. So, place has come a long way, baby, but this is a heck of a structure for us to fund as a facade.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? I take it you don't have any other comments? With that, we will entertain a motion on this item. Somebody would want to make that motion. Give it a shot.
Let's do it. All right, I'd like to make a motion to defer on this application and request that they submit site plans so that we can see what the proposed facade improvement will look like on the property.
And rendering.
And a rendering, please.
And would we encourage them to also apply tentatively, if the safety grant is approved, we would also ask that they put the camera systems under that?
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further conversation? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Kevin Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Catow,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington,
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That was an interesting conversation. Moving on to new business, we have before us the safety grant program. This program has been discussed on several different occasions by this board and input provided. I think we're closing in on what looks like a new opportunity to provide businesses and others the opportunity to come in for a grant related to safety and cameras. Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you and let us just update us as to where we are and
Sure.
what you need from us
Yeah.
in reference to this item.
So first and foremost, to be really honest with everyone, that amount in the memo that says whatever is left over pending all these grants awarded now is way off based on what we just did with all these grants. I may or may not be able to calculate that in the next few minutes if we discuss, but off the top of my head, I'm not even going to attempt to guess. I just know that that amount is going to be at least $100,000 more than that. Probably, let's see, we rejected 100,000, so we're probably in the realm of like $135,000, I believe, sounds about in that ballpark. Would what be left is what's left over now since we deferred those other grant applications. So just want to clarify that. Also, whatever funding we approve for the safety grant program, it and the facade grant program are both going to share that incentive account. So for this fiscal year, we budgeted $300,000 for incentives. All of those grants are all going to come from there. Even if one day we have a mural grant, any of our grant programs are going to come from that same line item, at least as it's structured now. The second thing after your memo is just a safe and secure program application. This is very straightforward, very to the point, and we did not have to reinvent the wheel thanks to my counterparts in Orlando. They have a program very similar to this, and this is very similar to their application. They just have to provide us, their business information, their type of business within the district, details, and the type of security installations that they're requesting. At this time, we're only planning to fund, and this was after conversations, again, I think a few of you were here and on the board when all this started, but these are conversations that the chief of police shared with us on feedback that kind of snowballed. It made a lot of sense to offer identification scanners, metal detection, as well as security cameras. We do add the caveat in the application, in the program description, and then on the back end, just like we have a legal agreement for the facade grant once it's approved, also will be in the legal agreement for this, that if they are seeking cameras, there will be additional meetings required with the police department to ensure compliance. And then there's also a caveat in there that if we are funding your security cameras and our police department requests to see them, see the footage, whatever it is, they have to comply. And we're just, we do that just to make sure that everybody is able to get what they need. Our businesses are safer and their safety infrastructure is upgraded, but our police department, they also, in the event of an emergency, they have the ability to access what they need. So again, we ask them that they spell out what type of security feature they're seeking for. Originally, we had talked about a lesser amount, but at the last meeting, I think it was a great suggestion. Gary, I think you actually made it to up the total amount of this grant to $10,000. And then we would, up to 80% of their full project or $10,000, so whichever was less. And then you've also got just kind of the more detailed structure a little bit of the program itself. Again, it talks about eligibility. They've got to own or lease their property in the CRA boundaries. They have to comply with the requirements of the city, inclusive of any permits, any code requirements, anything to do with building department. All security cameras have to be accessible to Jacksonville Beach Police Department when deemed necessary. And again, it says it again here, by applying and receiving this funding, you agree to allow Jacksonville Beach Police Department full access. It lists out the eligible products, and then on this one, there is a little bit more of an in-depth application process just because we don't really want to take any chances with safety, so we are going to require a pre-application meeting where prospective applicants will come in and meet with staff to just ensure that their project aligns with the goals of the city, more importantly with the goals of the police department. Once then they're deemed that, okay, they're in compliance with what they would like to see, then we would be able to turn around and bring that application to you guys. And much like our facade grant program, they will not receive any funding at all until everything has been completed, it has been inspected. We see that it works, the police department is able to go in there and see that, okay, yep, they did exactly what they were supposed to do, and if there are building permits required depending on what they are installing, our building official will also have to sign off, just like our facade grant.
Taylor, just for my information, I can't remember after reading through it, does it touch on maintenance also? Who's responsible for maintenance of the system ultimately?
It does, and the applicant is going to be responsible.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Mayor?
We had discussed, I think Dad brought it up, when I read it, it talks about weatherproofing if the cameras are outside. Does anything preclude them from having inside cameras?
At this time, no. In theory, if somebody wanted to upgrade their security cameras indoors, the only thing I would say is that we do talk about it has to have clear view of public spaces. So unless somehow an indoor camera is somehow weirdly looking out over a street, it's not going to be an eligible expense because of that. Number 3 under those eligible products, it says that install, it has to be oriented, provide clear views of public spaces.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll make sure too that we can, that's one area that the language is there, but maybe it's not clear enough. So we can also add an additional bullet point under that that says any cameras installed must have a clear view of public spaces.
Mayor?
Along those same lines of maintenance, is there a requirement for them to have them working for a certain period of time, is my concern. Right, because I can envision, we just awarded $100,000 or $10,000, whatever we just did. The police go in, they got to review, oh man, they weren't working. And it's like, okay, well, taxpayers just paid for the security system and now it's not working. So is there any requirement to say, well, if we're going to award this to you, you have to make sure that they are activated and working for a period of 1 year?
I think that's fantastic. I think under this last section in the guidelines where it says disclosures, that's where we have, they've got to work with law enforcement. We can reject any application. I think a bullet point under that could very easily be that the applicant receives these funds for any of the items, quite frankly, metal detection, any of it. They must keep, you're saying 3 years? Dad's given me a 3. So, 3 years I think seems reasonable. I don't know if the police department has any input or preference or lifespan on cameras and things like that. I mean, does 3 years sound reasonable? Not to put you on the spot. Sorry. That's a great.
Good afternoon. Thomas Crumley, the Detective Division Commander for the Jacksonville Beach Police Department. That, not to kick the can down the road, but it is very subjective as far as the electronic devices that they would be putting in. And
Sure.
The way we kind of read it and what we looked at, and I would have to go back. I think under the maintenance section is where it strikes me at the moment of where they would be committed to having these devices, no matter which one it is, that they would be obligated to have them functioning and working. And if not, once they're notified, they need to get it back up to working order as soon as they could. But that was, again, flash in the pan, sorry.
That's okay.
Going back, trying to recall all that stuff, but the way I read it, they would be obligated to a certain extent under the maintenance section of that agreement.
Commander,
Yes, sir.
would it be, and I don't want to put a burden on anybody, but would the Cape officers take a look at that on a monthly basis and make sure the systems are up and running? If they're not, at least notify somebody within the city to, we need to get on top of that and get that straightened out, or how would you see that being handled?
So with that, and with this being a new program, and y'all are considering voting on right now, that would be something that we would have to make considerations for of if we're spending taxpayer dollars to put that stuff out, that we would, in our checks and different interactions with the local businesses, obviously we would have to work that into our daily routine somehow, not necessarily daily with each business, but as we're moving forward with this, we would, between SEPTED, with Sergeant Tater, with the things that she's doing, and our business involvement and things that we're trying to be a lot more involved in the community here in the CRA especially, yes, that would be something that we would have to implement. For me to be able to tell you exactly what that is right now, I can't, because we don't have the program, and I'm not sure, you know, to what extent we would need to really do those inspections to make sure that we were effective in ensuring that taxpayers are getting their best bang for the buck as far as, you know, metal detectors are a lot more simplistic than a camera system, you know, although it seems like it should be the other way around. Camera systems are problematic out here, especially outdoor stuff, so.
I just want to make sure that we're thinking about the fact that we can do a little bit of monitoring of this.
Absolutely.
To make sure that we're all comfortable that things are operating where they need to.
Absolutely, and that's a big concern for us with the city camera system, and now that we're looking at expending CRA dollars for those public spaces like Ms. Mobbs was describing as far as the cameras go. That's our concern, is the public spaces and what they would be able to assist us with. So yes, we want to make sure that those are operational, they are working, and we would need to, once y'all approve the program and we start to see how things are going and what devices are approved, then we'll have to take that on a case-by-case basis of what we need to do to help the businesses ensure those are up and running.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, so Commander, I guess it's probably a question or comment for the group, and then also maybe some input from you. Just thinking about the how here a little bit, you know, going back to your earlier points about ongoing checks and things like that. Would it make sense to also, as part of this application process, require, I'm going to say, some version of an updated point of contact for each business that applies for these cameras, and updating through the years, right? Or whatever it is, if we agree on a 3-year period, update annually, such that if you or your team runs into any challenges with checking, you know, the cameras themselves or the functionality of those cameras, that there is someone at the top of the house that you have contact information for. What are your thoughts on that?
Definitely would be helpful, and we do try to keep an updated list through various means. We also, officers that are working the Cape unit, they go by, visit with businesses to try to make sure that the local businesses feel that partnership instead of, it's not an inspection, it's a partnership. It's, hey, what's going on? Is there anything we need to be aware of, that kind of stuff, and where I would rather think of it that way, and I would like to, maybe it's pride being what it is, but I would like to think we haven't gotten so far out of touch with the businesses in the downtown area that we wouldn't know who to get in contact with if we had that. But yes, obviously that would make things easier. That would be the easy button, right? But I think the effort that the men and women in that unit do for me every day with going out and making contact with the businesses, I don't foresee a problem with that.
Very, very helpful input, and thank you to you and your team for that constant engagement. Just a thought.
Megan?
Just to add on to that, is that overly burdensome to have to go? Because I'm thinking, yes, we want to have some check-in with it, and you don't want it to be here, oh, hey, we're here for an inspection, and then we're going to cite you if you don't do it. But is there something that we maybe want to consider putting in there that if it's, you know, we come 2, 3 times, whatever the case may be, that at that point you're clearly not going to comply for whatever reason, willingly or ordered from the city need to be revoked. You know, if we get to a certain point, is that practical or?
Kind of good segue there. I had taken all these feedback, had made a little section down here on that last section of this application package. I feel if the agency was at a comfort level to vote on this, maybe the vote could be to adopt this with this added clause, saying any applicant that receives these funds must maintain any systems in good working order for a minimum of 3 years. If there is damage to any system funded by the redevelopment agency, the applicant must notify city staff, and the applicant will have 30 days to show proof of repair. And by proof of repair, you know, sometimes it's not realistic, but at least they have to show that they have contacted whoever the metal detection was through, whoever the camera was through, and that takes a little bit of the burden off of PD, as if they don't, you know, have enough to do downtown for us. But you know, they can reach out to someone in our team and say, hey, our cameras went down, we're just letting you know, and they know by signing these agreements that if it's down, you've got 30 days to show us proof that you're getting repaired, and if they do not, then all funds are due back to the agency within 30 days.
I was just thinking about the 3-year time frame. And I think the warranty on cameras tend to be 5 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Totally depends on what system
And the
you're
manufacturer and
looking
stuff
at.
like that. To me, 3 years just seems a little bit on the short side. You know, but if after 3 years, the system goes down, what then? You know, now we don't have that capability anymore. I'm just thinking that 4 or 5 years makes maybe a little more sense to me.
Okay.
That's a very personal feeling, but that's, in my experiences, working with security cameras, it's a pain in the butt because they always seem to be going down. I don't know why, but it's a challenge and a half to keep them up and running.
It is. This is a harsh environment out here as far as the salt air and whatnot. But I will say, keep in mind, again, this is completely y'all's discretion. As far as businesses go and what we've observed with our technology, 3 years nowadays and technology-wise, that's can get long in the tooth depending on what you're looking at. So, but 3 to 5 years, that clause would be immensely helpful for us to have something to say, hey, this hasn't been working the last 2-3 times that we've needed it, and we've asked you, and you took taxpayer dollars, please get it up and running. That would definitely give us something to work from, so.
Mr. Chairman, I think 5 years though, I think the difference between the 3 to 5 years, I mean, I don't see any problem putting it in for 5 years, because at the end of the day, they're gonna have to maintain the systems regardless if they wanna keep that level of safety for the business, and we hope that they will. I don't think the difference between 3 and 5 is much. I think 5 is appropriate.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, it's fine, and just touched on the point. The point is that the businesses want these cameras for their own purposes as well. It's not just to serve us. So hopefully they would have some incentive to keep them running. But I think 5's fine, no problem. But we need to be optimistic and hope that they take a positive attitude toward keeping them running, because they took a positive attitude toward putting them in the first place.
I would say we've had a very positive response from several of the business owners in the downtown area that have helped us over the last couple of years as far as their camera systems and criminal cases that we were investigating. And that symbiotic relationship has existed where it's been beneficial to them, but it's been beneficial to us as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Taylor, I think there are 2 actions we need here. One is the approval of the basic grant proposal, and then on top of it, do we need to have a conversation about funding the grant?
Yes and no, because the maximum amounts are already spelled out in the program, so the most that an applicant will receive is 80% of their total project costs, up to $10,000. That'll be the max, so even if they're for whatever reason, let's say their safety program is $200,000, but you know, they're gonna get is the 10,000. If it's 5,000, they'll get 80% of that. Because it's coming out of the incentive line item, there's kind of two ways this could go. We can understand that the incentive budget is $300,000. That was a part of our budget cycle. That's a given. If the agency wants to keep it at that, and then, you know, maybe it's something that as these roll in, kind of like we did in this one, we just update, hey, FYI, pending approval, this is how much is left in each of these line items, and we keep you updated that way. Or, you know, the agency can say, okay, look, all we want to spend is 50,000 out of that 300 for this program. That's up to you guys.
Excuse me. I think, just from my perspective, I'd like to see it broken out into two categories so that we can really track the dollars and know where the, you know, the monies are going. To me, I was thinking that, you know, trying to fund it with at least $50,000, which would mean 5 different businesses would be allowed to come in and apply for the security improvements, would be the first step. If this becomes such a big hit, then, you know, somewhere in our budgeting cycle, you know, hopefully we can fund even more or take it out of another line item depending on where we're at that point in time. But at least my thought is at least funding it with $50,000 would be an initial first step. On that subject, I mean, if anybody has any comments, I would love to hear. Ben?
50 or 100. But I think these gentlemen can tell us how much interest they think they're gonna have. 5, 10?
Next year.
I'm sorry. How many businesses do you think are gonna come out to this in the first 6 months? 5 or 10?
I'm not sure, and.
Of course not.
Right.
At least two.
and-
At least two for sure. We
We
know we
have-
have two.
Right, we already have 2 that are looking at taking advantage of it. I would assume through the business, owners meetings that the mayor has, I would assume probably 10. If, you know, I had to throw a number at it, but,
Hey, that's the good guess, that's all we need.
all right.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Kevin?
So just some clarifying questions on the budget and funding. It's currently proposed to be funded out of the incentives line, I'm sorry, what is the actual, is it $300,000? Okay, right. And Gary, your proposal is to set aside a set amount of funds specifically for this program. Am I hearing that right?
That was my thought, yes.
Okay. Is that something that we could revisit for next year as we, since this
Absolutely.
program seems to be standing at the beginning, I'm saying in the midst of an already set budget, could we also, I guess, defer that specific line item until next budget season, see how the interest grows over time, and then adjust?
Yes, we can, and, you know, we can even adjust it during the cycle if we think it's appropriate, and that's something that, you know, staff would bring back to us again at that time, but we have the opportunity, and, you know, before you know it, we're going to be in the budgeting cycle starting coming up here in March, April, we start into the cycle, and so we'll all be able to start taking a look at those numbers and deciding how best to adjust it for fiscal year 26. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it does. I think my stance on do we separate us? I'm in agreement that we should have a separate line item for it. I just think that since we have a set aside budget for both of these programs, both the facade and the assumed approved safety program, as long as we're cognizant of the fact that it's coming from the same bucket of money and staff can report out on how far we've gone on each, I think we should be able to manage it, but just one guy's opinion. Thank you.
Brian, did you have? Yeah.
If the best guess is 10, maybe we should say 100, and then when these meetings are here's the pot, if you want some, come get it now. That might provide a little bit of impetus for people to move on it, I don't know.
I think the only issue that we're gonna run into this fiscal year, to Kevin's point, is we're already into the fiscal year. We've already encumbered funds in other grants, so we've already started eating into that 300,000. I'll tell you straight, if we do 100,000 today for safety grant, the deferred facade grant that we deferred today, you can't consider it, and anything else that would potentially come in, you couldn't consider. I did initially think, okay, saying 30 or 50 or whatever would make sense, but the more, you guys have kind of talked through it, I think from the staff side, and I'm happy to develop the finance. If you guys do vote on this and we approve it, I'm happy to circle back with them tomorrow to make sure that they also concur. But being as these programs are both intended to be funded from that same incentive line item, I do think it makes sense to leave it kind of as is, understanding now instead of one program pulling from this pot of money, we now have two. And then as these grants come forward, staff just keeps the agency members up to date on, okay, this is where we're at with incentives, this is where we're at with safety, and then here's your bottom line, you've got 50,000 to play with still. Until we, I think, have a better understanding of how many businesses are gonna be seeking this, and then that also will help us determine how we need to break these funds out separately for fiscal year 26. To your point, if we get every business downtown instantaneously saying we wanna do this, we wanna do this, we wanna do this, we're gonna need to pivot real quick for next fiscal year. So I do think it provides us a really good opportunity to keep things as they are, see where this is going, and then it helps us make a really good decision for next fiscal year.
I appreciate your comments, but, I'm on the same page with you. I think if for some reason all of this becomes, a large program, then I think we can still revisit it this fiscal year.
Yeah.
But it's gonna take some time to go
Absolutely.
through where would those funds come from. And
Yep.
let's see what we start with and then work from there.
Yep.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm just gonna concur with that approach. That would be a great problem to have, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right, so, I'm all for it.
So with that, I guess, do we need two motions, Taylor?
No, if everyone is comfortable with this just remaining that this is an incentive program and we're improving an additional incentive program under that $300,000 for FY25, all we would need is a motion to approve the safety grant program with the additional disclosure regarding to maintenance and requiring them to maintain it. And then once I get this drafted up, not in my green handwriting over here, I will send out this week an updated version of this with that additional disclosure, just so everybody can see it.
No need to identify the dollar amount as an mitigation.
Nope.
I think that was the motion that Ron was going to make.
Would you like to
That was
formally?
the motion I was going to make, yes.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Yes. Mr. Kevin Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley,
Yes.
Mr. Gary Paytow,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington,
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards.
Yes.
Fantastic. That finishes our new business item. We have, I think, 2 items left on the agenda. Do you want to do staff reports first or do that at the end?
If that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, could we kind of just jump into the staff report section briefly? Okay, perfect. So this one's going to look a little bit unique compared to previous staff reports. Those of you that are new to the agency, then you're not going to know any difference. What I'm going to have for you guys is a list of downtown projects, South End projects, and then I did print copies. They're not beautifully bound because those weren't ready, but I did print you guys the downtown plan that you approved. This is just the pretty version, none of the content. None of the content has changed, like I told you guys. So what we're taking a look at, and I will start with downtown. And to our guests, thank you for sticking around with us. We have got the far left column. That first column you're going to look at is, these are business plan CIP items. These are not new items. These should not be any shock to anyone. These are what we approved in fiscal year 2025 as a part of our capital improvement process, business plan process, and budget. The second column is something that we see internally a lot because of the business plan side of things, but the state statute requires our redevelopment plan to conform to your city's strategic plan. So that second column is exactly where in the city strategic plan these projects are derived from. The third column is exactly where that lives in the downtown plan. The fourth column is an important one. This is exactly what was budgeted and approved by the agency and city council and then sent to our taxing authority, which is Duval County. That is what was approved for this fiscal year, so that's what we're working with. And then a little bit of the status. A couple of things I want to touch on. I will start with the pier parking lot. So this has been a long journey. We did actually reach out to Public Works during this meeting. The 2 dumpsters that are in the fenced off area, there is no overflow at all. We have images, not right this present moment. They just sent us some pictures, so whatever was there previously is no longer. The reason those are there is because the first part of this is they are currently removing that dumpster enclosure. That was part 1 to starting this whole process. We issued the PO for that a couple of weeks back. They're demoing that. They're putting the new concrete pad on the northern end of the pier parking lot and reconstructing that enclosure, and then they will be moving dumpsters inside of that new enclosure. That new enclosure will actually be finished with it's cinder block, and it's going to have a very soft, solid, light color finishing, because that is one of the Public Art Committee's priorities for this fiscal year, is to then have a local artist do a mural around that dumpster enclosure, so it is aesthetically pleasing. The other PO that was just issued Monday to Mayor Construction is for all the hardscapings on phase 1 of the pier parking lot. So they will be doing that entryway, which will include the new driveway, the asphalt, the concrete, the pavers, the decorative components, and then they will lay out all the curbing and banding necessary for the landscape. And then we will be handling landscaping internally with our Parks and Rec contract that we have currently for landscaping. But that PO is officially, it is issued, it is through all of our departments that it needed to go through as of this Monday, and we are meeting next week on site. One of our permit conditions, for those of you who don't know, it was quite a process, Gary. I know you remember of getting the DEP permit for this project. It took us over a year to even get DEP to sign off on the lights due to the proximity to the ocean. One of the conditions of that permit is prior to official construction commencement, they have to come back out and do a site visit with the contractor and staff. So we'll be conducting that next week, and as soon as DEP has come and seen the site and we get their thumbs up, we are good to start construction. So we're very excited about that. A couple of other things on here. The Latham Plaza, again, I know the members who have been here a while know this. Half and Associates is our consultant with that. They are working on our bid package. That bid package is for phase 1. I believe our 2 new members, I provided a map of what that phase 1 was in their orientation packet. So as soon as we receive those, we will work in our procurement department to get that onto the street and get some bids on the phase 1 construction. We have had various event promoters, rightfully so, reaching out, just kind of, hey, where are things standing? How do we need to pivot our events? And we let them all know that at this time, we're just not comfortable estimating how long construction will be, when it will be, until we receive a bid package so we can have a better understanding. Once we have that, we will communicate that to all of our event producers who are scheduling events, and we will work with them. The signage, we had to, oh, yeah.
Just because I'm getting some questions in reference to Latham Plaza.
Mm-hmm.
And do we see any construction occurring this year within Latham Plaza, or do you think it's going to be more like this time frame next year that we would start construction?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wish I had a better answer, and I'll give you the same one I gave an event producer this week. At this time, I'm just not comfortable putting a time constraint on it because we've done that so many times in the past, and unfortunately, things out of our control have occurred. I will give you a timeline once we receive the bid package, and once our procurement department receives that, it'll realistically be 30 to 60 days before they can get that package out on the street. That bid will likely remain open for 60 days. At the end of that 60 days, there will be a review of those. We will rank those. Once those candidates have been ranked, they then come to the CRA for approval, and then they go to City Council for approval. Realistically, once we begin negotiations with a contractor, and when we receive those bids, in all their bids, they are required to give us a timeline So once we have those, I'll be a lot more comfortable answering that answer. But it could be something where we get the documents from half tomorrow, and that changes everything, and then, I'm able to say, oh, we can start in the fall, or it could be 2 months. And
Well, and the reason I mention it is just for us to keep in mind that as we get to the latter stages of the year, that we've got to really take a look at how we're going to dovetail with some of the events out there, in particular, deck the chairs.
yeah, that's always been on the radar.
What are we going to do? How are we going to make that work? Are we going to start construction before that, they do their thing, or do we do it after? And again, I understand you don't have all the answers right now, but I would just want us to be sensitive to that and make sure that we've thought that all the way through.
We absolutely are. And, again, at the end of the day,
And the other thing along those lines, you're showing approved budget amounts in here, but some of these require an additional approval because, as an example, Lakeland Plaza was ultimately identified in the capital improvements plan at $4 million. But yet we're
so it's broken out for 2 fiscal years. So, yeah, so you'll see what's approved for some of these in this fiscal year, like Latham, for example, is only half that budget. And then next fiscal year, when 26 rolls around and we do the spreadsheet, you'll see this. Or if we don't spend that $2 million this year, and then staff will do our process of finance where we have to carry forward these funds. So if you look to the CIP right now, you'll see for 25 and 26, $2 million. A few months from now, when we're in like September, October, that may turn into $3.5 million for 26, and we ended up at 500 this year. But so yes, that's just the full budget for this fiscal year.
And same thing true for your parking lot.
Mhm.
That's only,
Yep.
at this point, roughly half of
Yep.
the total amount for the day of your work with that.
Yes, sir. Exactly.
Thank you.
And again, the only other one I wanted to touch on was signage. Again, Gary, I keep calling you out, but you're now our most tenured member on board. So, you have been around, and we originally had this really massive wayfinding signage project. It became very obvious that, okay, that was a little bit maybe overkill. And so what has kind of transpired over the last couple of years was scaling that down to about $100,000 every fiscal year. I think in our CIP right now it's for the next 5 fiscal years. To take a look at the downtown signage and upgrade, make everything consistent. And one thing we learned with an inventory is that we have a lot of sign clutter. We have a lot of signs that are repetitive and not necessary. And so kind of taking this approach to, okay, we're going to eliminate the signs clutter. We're going to figure out what's needed. And then as far as the actual wayfinding signage, which was kind of the core of what started this process, we will then kind of follow suit with what the city does. Everything kind of fell into line. So right now we're waiting to see what direction City Council takes. I believe at their next briefing, the administration and communications departments are bringing some recommendations for citywide signage program. And so while we don't want to be absolutely identical, we also want to mirror each other. We don't want to be so different that it doesn't look like the same city. So we're going to wait and see what comes out of that briefing and then update you guys from there. South End District is pretty simple right now. We are doing maintenance. Full disclosure, that maintenance line item amount, that is 2 separate line items in the budget. I combined them for the purposes of this chart. But there are 2 separate line items relating to the budget. One is just related to maintenance of trees, which is actually really, really intense maintaining trees. And then the passive park construction, we have all 900 of that in this fiscal year. I am still very cautiously optimistic we will get through that project before October. We heard from CHW, they have been coordinating with the Stormwater Management District and Beaches Energy to try to figure out for the bollards, it's a transformer in that area, is it able to withstand the additional bollards, even though the bollards are still going to pull X amount of it. So it's been a lot of coordination. They're waiting on, I think, one more answer related to the transformer situation, and then we're working with them on what permits they're going to need, because this is, again, kind of a new project. No one's ever really done a passive park, so in the way of permitting, it's very unique even for the permitting department, because we kind of have to get a little creative, but that is still chugging along nicely. I am happy to answer any questions you may have, but like I said, we really kind of wanted to provide this just at a good point with new board members, everybody's kind of in new positions, and just kind of remind everyone of where we were at with this year's budget, kind of what we're doing, how much we had allocated projects on this chart. I'm going to do a complete separate chart just for those alone because those took my one pager and made it a lot more lengthy. I'm kidding, I'm just picking at them. But I will have a complete separate chart for both districts at our next meeting on the public works infrastructure projects.
Yeah, and, you know, just as a little bit of history to our new board members, we're doing a large infrastructure project roughly from 4th Avenue south to, I think it's 8th Avenue south, from the beach to 3rd Street. All of the streets, alleyways, avenues are all being torn up. New sewers, water, storm sewer, new paving, new sidewalks is going in. At the start, a 900-day construction project. I think we're about roughly halfway through from what I've seen. We hope.
And there is an incentive for early completion also.
Yeah, incentive for
Fingers crossed.
completion and things to that extent. But that was a project that, by the time we got everything pulled together and got the bids in, unfortunately ended up being significantly more in the way of cost than what we had initially anticipated. So now that's put a little bit of a challenge on us as we go forward with our budgeting and so forth. How do we fund all of the other things that we want to try to accomplish in terms of the CIP program that's out there, capital improvements program schedule, and there are a number of projects on there that we'd like to move forward also, but it's going to be limiting and, you know, depending on the revenues received as well as expenditures and so forth, but we'll get into all that stuff coming up here.
And they were given the CIP in their massive binders that I provided them with. And yes, and that project is one of several that are listed under our CIP projects. Again, I know a lot of this can sometimes seem like drinking from a fire hydrant, but we'll get through it.
And along with that, depending on how our conversation goes with city council coming up here, we may be driven in slightly different directions, and we're going to have to make some adjustments to accommodate all to be seen as we move forward here. Anything else on the staff report?
No, nothing super pressing at this time. I will try to we're trying to take a different approach, and Gary can tell you the staff reports have evolved substantially over the last 4 years. Something we're going to kind of look at now is providing something like this one meeting, and then the very next meeting doing the other element of our staff reports where it's just kind of development updates and where projects are. And when I do those development updates, they are predominantly in the district, but oftentimes things that are also outside the district that are big news, we'll update you on those as well, just because we all know you're going to get asked questions. So we'd rather prepare you with the information. But so we don't bog you down with all of it at once, I'll probably kind of do it on an alternating basis and go CIP charts one meeting, development, and then obviously if there are major updates, well,
Bring those forward.
absolutely. And then the gentleman, for those 2 new board members, I didn't get to this quick enough, the gentleman that just had to leave, that was sitting right here at the front table. That is Mr. Jim Gilmore with the Southern Group. I sung his praises to both of you in your orientation. He did not have Molly with him, but she's also normally with him there with the Southern Group, and they are a tremendous help to us. He unfortunately had to run to get back to downtown Jacksonville for another meeting with COJ tonight. But I promise at the next meeting I will introduce you formally.
We had a quick intro.
Oh, good. Okay. Sorry, that's when I stepped out. Thank you. Okay, good. Thank you. But yes, so, but Jim apologized for having to run out. He just had to get to another meeting, so I did want to let everyone know that. But that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
That was fun.
Oh, and we do still have one more item for discussion. Not quite done with me
We have
yet.
one more item on our agenda, unfortunately.
We can do this.
But I think might be an interesting conversation. Under items for discussion, low-speed vehicle parking lot scope and fee.
Yes, sir.
This is an item that I think was brought forth from City Council as a consideration for the empty lot that sits on 2nd Street and 4th Avenue North.
Yes, sir.
And that is a lot that's owned by the CRA. And
wanting to offer an amenity for local traffic, if you will. So locals that are wanting to just come down and grab a bite to eat with their family, they want to drive their golf cart, you know, rather than having to fight and find a parking space on a busy weekend. This is designated spaces that are very clearly labeled for low-speed vehicles only. Those would also include scooters in theory. We would also add some bike racks in there as well, probably some of our more fun decorative ones like we've done before, so we can accommodate more bicycles as well. And then one thing that did come up that I also think is a great concept is having some additional ADA spaces in this lot. There are not a lot of ADA spaces downtown, so proposed in this lot, the only spaces that would be for regular vehicles would be ADA.
One thought that I had is, as I was looking at this, is that you know, to a certain extent, I don't want to see more asphalt downtown. We've already got plenty of asphalt and parking lots and so forth. It'd be nice if this was left in some way a green area. And, you know, I've done projects in the past where you've used pavers that allow you to grow grass through them and so forth. You know, if that could be done, as the consultants look at conceptual ideas, maybe look at that as an option, so that and then those pavers could be pulled up at the end and maybe reused somewhere else. But it's not more asphalt. Your comment about the ADA spaces would require asphalt because you've got to get those folks safely, you know, to the sidewalks and
Right.
things like that. So I would just encourage us to be really creative here and see what we can do that makes that still a very nice kind of green space, but yet allows for that low-speed vehicle parking.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, that
Agree completely, and that also backs into the point that was just made that this would not be built for eternity. So if it was a little lighter, a little brighter, a little less expensive perhaps, and something we talked about before the meeting, our electricity, I mean, any electric low-speed vehicle is generally charged, in my experience, always charged with 110. And any vehicle that might need to take a charge is going to carry its own extension cord, if they've got much sense at all. So,
Listen, we're not gonna have any charging stations. That was very, that came up at that briefing. They went back into, for that very reason, on are we gonna have charging stations? And the intent was, they charge the golf cart at home, have enough juice to get downtown, make sure you got enough to go home.
that's where I'm getting at. I've got
Yep.
one that's 20-some odd years old, uses regular old-fashioned batteries, it's got a 25-mile range. But I thought I saw in the proposal when I was reviewing your documents that electricity and charging wasn't specified in the proposal for them to consider.
No, it is assumed there will be no charging options available in this lot.
Really?
Mhm.
I guess I wasn't reading it correctly. Excuse me.
Hey, listen, I do it all the time. It's
Well, the only
perfect.
other issue with the 110 is you end up with itinerant cell phone charging stations too.
Sure.
Problems.
Absolutely, but if we will, it's on this first page, but I will also, if approved, when we do circle back with the consultants, we will reiterate that, because that was also the wishes of council, were for this to just be a surface lot, no charging, at all.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sydney?
Yeah, so I love this idea, and, you know, although I aspire to be a golf cart owner as a cyclist, I really appreciate, the spirit of this. But I do agree, that, you know, having, taking a more creative approach to it, especially using the constraint of a, you know, it's not gonna be around forever, like taking a more creative approach to make not just another parking lot is something I can definitely get behind. The one concern I had is just like if, we're anticipating that there would be a lot of enforcement, needed, like to make sure that there are low-speed vehicles being parked there and that it's not being abused in any way. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have to come into, it'd be a kind of a multi-layer component to this, where That phase 200 and that conceptual design, that signage layout, we would have to have very clearly defined signage that says anybody that violates these rules will be towed. And then at that point, we would have to coordinate with our team over at the police department, with our CAPE officers, like, hey, listen, you're patrolling, you see a regular vehicle, not in an ADA space, but in one of these LSD, then we automatically have a tow number and we call, and as unfortunate as that is, they have to be towed. But that would be something with this signage layout that we also work out, that we make sure the signs are very visible to everyone, so the rules are very clearly defined, and if you break them, it is what it is.
Actually, the good thing is right across the street, right across Second Street is the Cape parking lot.
Yes.
And that's,
Ample parking.
all vehicles, so, you know, and it's probably the one that's most minimally used in the city, that from my observations, and, you know, obviously, one would hope that if you've got a full-size vehicle, you're gonna park over there versus in the other lot, but that's maybe one of the benefits is having that. Megan?
Yep, I'm with Cindy. I think this is a great idea. Maybe a pebble parking lot, maybe we could do something like that, easily removable, whatever the case may be. But I think something like this, I love it. I think it embraces the beach life. That's what we're supposed to be going for. Between the urban trail, it's supposed to be walkable. It's supposed to be kind of catered to the locals, which are bikes and golf carts. So why not cater to them and make it easier to enjoy the downtown district? So I'm with you all.
I know city council was, you know, very adamant that they'd like to move this along fairly quickly, because let's get something in place so that, people can get the benefit of it. The challenge will be trying to move it along quickly.
Right.
Getting half to get the drawings done, let's get the concepts out there. I mean, we really need to hold them to a schedule and have them produce it. And then the next challenge for the board is, you know, whatever the cost is for this, where are we going to fund it? Where does the funding come from? We've already talked about a little bit about our challenges, but I think this item does become one of the priorities for us, I think, through the rest of this year. Right.
I'd like to move approval.
You'd like to make a motion
Make a motion to move approval.
to approve the consultant
Expenditure for the low-speed vehicle parking lot is hopefully green.
Got it, noted.
Thank you.
do we have a second?
Second.
All right.
We have a second. Quick roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Kevin Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Thad Mosley,
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Gary Paytown,
Yes.
Mr. Ron Whittington,
Yes.
Ms. Megan Edwards.
Yes.
Fantastic. And we will get back with the consultant. We will work on a timeline, and we will update council on this the next time we talk with them.
Fantastic. Just as we, would like our next to adjourn here, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware that our next meeting is a CRA City Council joint workshop. And that meeting is scheduled for January 27th, and it is at 5:30 to 7.
Yes, sir.
And it will be down at the Parks and Rec, down at Sunshine Park. I guess they're going to be doing some renovations here.
New AV system. We're super excited.
So our meeting will be down at Sunshine Park with City Council. And you can kind of get an idea, a little bit of the agenda based on what Taylor provided us a little while ago. But if you have any questions about any of those items, I'm sure she can fill you in.
Absolutely.
And I, you know, look forward to a really good conversation with City Council on the priorities for this next year, what their expectations are of the CRA. Any last minute thoughts, comments from the board? Anybody? Kevin?
Thanks for having me.
Good discussion.
Second that. And Taylor, thank you for always being so prepared, but thank you for this. I think
You are
this
very
stuff is
welcome.
really digestible and helpful.
It's great. I will keep it up then.
And I thank everybody on the board. This was my first meeting as chair, and, you know, hopefully.
You did great.
Hopefully that
You did
meeting will
great.
go on. I'm learning, just give me a little